All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this year's HOPWA webinar. Uh, as those of you may know, my name is Nilufar. I am the grants analyst that works on the HOPWA program. We also have our new Formula Grants Manager, who I have announced via email to all of you. His name is Jim Flatford. Jim, would you like to briefly introduce yourself before we get started?
Sure. Thank you, Neelafar. Jim Flatford. I am new to the HOPWA world, but not new to IHCDA or federal grants. I've been managing the ESG program, the Emergency Solutions Grant, for a couple of years here at IHCDA, and I'm just thrilled to now have Neelufar under me and able to see her do the awesome work that she does with you all, and happy to learn alongside you all and about all the awesome work you do. So thanks.
All right. Thank you, Jim. All right, so we have a lot to cover in today's webinar. I'll give a brief summary of that. We'll talk about the HOPWA program as a whole, as well as the client eligibility criteria, where we are at with the 25 awards. Um, We'll also talk about eligible expenses and the new claim submission guidelines, and give a reminder about the new documentation requirements that the claims process now has. We will go through all the different requirements and policies that the HOPWA program is governed under, both ranging from like the rent standard to confidentiality, documentation, and reporting. We'll also give you some insight on the closeout requirements, which are still similar from last year, but have a few tweaks to them. We will also give a few updates from our team, just so you have a better idea of what's going on. And if time permits, we'll end it with questions, which Jim and I will tag team on to answer for you.
So client eligibility for HOPWA. One individual in the household must be living with HIV or AIDS, regardless of the individual's age. Income level is 80% of AMI or less. You have to be physically located within the Indiana balance of states jurisdiction, which is every state or every county in the state except for Marion County. And then you will do your documentation confirming eligibility and keep that on file.
So with the 25 awards, most of you have signed your agreements, and our signatory has also signed those agreements. For the agreements that have been signed, there should be an award created and funded on IHCDA online. And for those who are who do have their awards online, they have received their emails on late claims approvals. If you are having any questions or concerns about some of like anything in the email, like if there's any questions about the claims documentation process or the other factors that are going on, please just let Jim or I know, and we will work with you to make sure that you have everything that you need. I do see in the chat, it looks like there's some issue with sound. If everyone can briefly confirm in the chat whether you can hear us or not, that would be helpful. I don't have anything muted on my end. I want to make sure that at least it's not something going on with our microphones or anything like that.
Okay, good. Yeah, it looks like we're good, and it might be a problem that Victoria is having with her computer.
Okay. And we will post the recording and the slides up on our website just to give everyone a bit of reassurance, so that any of the materials that you see on here, if you're trying to frantically take notes, you really don't have to do that. we will get that as up for you as soon as we can. Okay. All right.
All right, well, I'm going to talk through some of the eligible expenses for HOPWA. Here, kind of give you an overview of the different buckets, for lack of a better term, that we have our eligible expenses under. First off, we have long-term rental assistance, often referred to as TBRA, tenant-based rental assistance. We have our long-term program delivery, which is kind of partnered with that TBRA assistance. Short-term rent mortgage utilities, often referred to as STRIMU. Short-term program delivery, facilities operations and facility-based assistance, housing information services, permanent housing placement, sometimes referred to as PHP, supportive services, resource identification, which is new for the 2025 awards, and administration. We'll dive into each one of those. So for TBRA, that long-term rental assistance, this is ongoing monthly rent and utility assistance to clients for rental housing. There is no term limit. This can be long-term for folks that qualify for the program. If you would like to impose a term limit, you can, and this will be covered a little more in the HOPWA manual that is coming out here soon. So for TBRA clients to be eligible, they would need to meet HOPWA client eligibility, so have that one household member with HIV/AIDS and 80% of AMI, must not own a home, so don't have that asset to fall back on, and not currently receiving or expecting to receive a rental subsidy from other state or local resources. Some ineligible expenses. Um, Again, this line is really focused on that rent and utilities. So ineligible would be any late fees caused by a late payment to the landlord by the project sponsor. Rent for a unit owned by a client's relative. We've got an asterisk there because there can be some situations where that is the best place for a client. That would require more of a discussion with us. But as you approach this, we can't have rent going to a client's family member that they're staying there. But reach out to us if you do have any interesting situations like that. Security deposits are ineligible. Expenses due to repairs or damage on a unit, and mortgage expenses are ineligible. Again, this is a rental assistance program. So we have long-term program delivery, which is kind of your staff time that's coupled with TBRA. So this is your staff time fringe benefit costs that are directly related to administering long-term rental assistance. Example of eligible expenses: your staff time verifying rent reasonableness, mileage to perform housing inspections. Those direct rent and utility assistance payments, again, go under their own line and would not fall under this bucket. Then we have STRIMU, the short-term rent and mortgage assistance, mortgage and utility assistance. This is a preventative program that's really meant to keep people from becoming homeless, to keep your clients from becoming homeless. It can assist with mortgage, rent, and utilities. Again, if you work in COC or ESG, it can kind of comparable to homeless prevention. There is a time limit with STRIMU, and this is a 21-week cap within a 1-year period. And that period of assistance begins on the day that the first payment is made. 1 month of assistance rounds to 4 weeks, so it turns out to be about 5 months of assistance. What's great about this line item is, again, you're preventing someone from becoming homeless. We're not subject to FMR and rent reasonable. They're already in the unit, and so we want to keep them there, and we know it might not be eligible. So you're bound to that 21-week cap, but it's not subject to FMR and rent reasonableness requirements. Client eligibility for Stremu, you have your HOPWA eligibility that needs to be met, have a lease or mortgage on file, and then we need to have demonstrations that the household really is in need of this assistance, that other resources aren't going to help, that they are at risk of homelessness. So something from a landlord showing that they will be evicted, something from a mortgage lender if they are behind in their mortgage, showing that they're at risk of being homeless. Um, and then we need to make sure that ongoing housing needs are assessed in conjunction with this. And again, the goal is that they're staying housed. Some ineligible expenses under Stremu, and you might notice some of these ineligible expenses are actually eligible under other buckets. So that's what you want to key in on, is which is the right line to charge against. So for Stremu, some ineligible expenses are realtor fees, moving assistance, security deposit. Again, late fees caused by a late payment due to the project sponsor being late paying that. Any auto repair expenses, those aren't eligible. Internet, cable, or phone services, and anything over that 21 weeks within a year period would be ineligible for that client. Short-term program delivery, this is the staff time, the line that you could use to capture that staff time expense for serving folks in Stremu. And again, a reminder, those direct rent utilities, mortgage assistance falls under the Stremu line. This is your staff time for serving those folks. Here is a table that I won't go into detail with, but it's really good to refer back to on kind of the comparison between TBRA and Stremu. And you will likely have clients that go through both programs. They might start off in one and go into another. That is possible. The goal with Stremu is to provide short-term stabilizing intervention. So we're taking somebody that's kind of in emergency, at risk of homelessness, stabilizing their situation. For TBRA, the goal is to subsidize long-term, safe, and affordable occupancy. So we're looking at a long-term approach there. This is their home going forward. And I'll let you all refer back to this table once you get these slides. So another line that you do have available within your award is supportive services. This is your time spent by staff to improve a client's access to care and services. You might be spending time or encountering expenses getting them enrolled in mental health or health services, doing assessments, daycare for the kiddos in the household, nutritional services, um, and then linking them up with other federal resources they might be eligible for. These are additional eligible expenses for supportive services, transportation, education, employment assistance, legal services. Um, Again, that legal services relating to housing issues only. We know they can have a lot of things going on in their life, but the case needs to be made that this relates to housing. Life skills management courses, and then staff time fringe benefits with administering these type of services. So you might have some staff time charged against this line. You might have some vendor payments for the services that that client is receiving. Housing information services. This is a line for staff time that is used determining the best types of HOPWA assistance for each client. This allows for housing counseling, for information referral services. It allows for some expenses for informational materials if you're printing those out and distributing those to clients. This would be the line item for that. Permanent housing placement, sometimes referred to as PHP, helps clients establish a new residence where ongoing occupancy is expected to continue. So this is placing a client who is either homeless or facing an intervention or facing an eviction in a new unit. There is no limit on the times that a HOPWA eligible client or family accesses this assistance, but this is again to help them get placed and going in a new residence with the goal of permanent housing. Some eligible expenses under this line item are application fees, administration fees, security deposit, first month's, last month's rent, um, utility connection fees, a lot of those things that you just need to pay up front to get somebody into a unit. Um, we can even access rent and utility arrears if that's a barrier to that permanent housing. Security deposits cannot exceed 2 months of rent. And then you can capture some staff salary and fringe benefits under PHP as well for these services. Some ineligible expenses would be first and last months if that client, sorry, already has a rental subsidy. So we're all about dealing with barriers and gaps here. If they've already got that assistance, that would not be eligible. Also not eligible is housing supplies and goods or moving services or materials. Ongoing rent, utilities, those are going to be captured in a different line item. Repairs to a unit associated with move-in would not be eligible. Security deposits over that 2-month value. And in staff time that's not associated with PHP work. You are able to get, if renter's insurance is required for that unit that they're moving into, you are able, or sorry, you're able to do the first month or initial payment, but anything after that is ineligible. Facility-based operations or facility operations and facility-based assistance, sorry. So this is housing connected with a facility or project that you as a project sponsor have. So this could be is a lot of times project-based rental assistance. Um, so this could be master leasing of units or a facility that the project sponsor is operating. Some eligible expenses for operating costs include maintenance, security, insurance, utilities, furnishings, equipment for that facility. These costs must be reasonable and necessary. You'll need to justify those and show how they're reasonable. Keep documentation on file. If you're making any purchases with this line item, you will need our staff approval for any purchases over 15,000. That was raised here recently by the government. Really, if you're making any large purchase, it is good for you to check with us in case there are some caveats that you don't really know about. Vehicle purchases, we've ran into major issues with those in some other grant programs. So any big ticket item, it's good to check with us. All right, so some ineligible expenses for facility operations and facility-based assistance. Rental assistance that's not specified for a dedicated unit. Assistance at facility that does not serve housing, such as like your office, that might be better captured under admin. Um, Acquisition, rehabilitation, conversion, or repair to provide housing services is not eligible under this line item, nor is new construction. And not able to repair objects or items that are permanent fixtures of that building. Resource identification. So this one is this our new one, Neilafar?
Yes, this is the new
Okay,
line item that we have gotten for this year.
awesome. I wanted to make sure before I started misspeaking there.
You're
So
good.
for, I appreciate you. For the 2025 award and going forward, through our con plan, we got resource identification added. This is staff time or maybe some vendor fees for assessments that is used to look at the system level issues. Maybe you're identifying and tracking housing resources like as a whole for your community. You're strengthening relationships with landlords and other folks in the affordable care or affordable housing network. Participating in regional planning council meetings. Things that are working to that systems level. And we will be talking more about this in the manual that Neelafar puts out. But if you have questions with this being a new line item, do feel free to reach out to us.
Mhm.
Right. So this line item, again, focused on the kind of systems level. It's not for directly serving clients. There are other appropriate budget line items for that. And again, this is new with this year's award. All right, lastly, for eligible expenses, we have administration, and you can use up to 7% of your award for this. And eligible expenses are those things that really aren't direct client servicing that are needed to run your program. So office supplies and postage, rent and utilities of your office space itself, any costs associated with attending HOPWA related trainings that are approved by HUD. That notice would come either through us or through another federal outlet. So you would receive notice that you would have an eligible training you could go to. And then staff time spent creating and submitting reports, budgets, claims, things like that would fall under admin. And I'll hand it over to you, Neelafar, to talk about claims.
All right. So, for many of you may know that we have updated our claim submission process, mostly with regards to the supporting documentation and some requirements on how we will be doing our due diligence to protect PII or personal identifying information. Um, there is some just more introductory information for just as a reminder for how the claim submission process goes, just so the information is out there and that everyone, whether it's new staff or continuing staff, has that reminder for how the claim submission process will go moving forward. So, first, I want to reiterate that our claim submission process is through IHCDA online, and anyone who needs access to IHCDA online, if you are going to submit claims on your agency's behalf, simply contact our claims team, claims@ihcda.in.gov, and they will be able to help you. Um, in most cases, the claim submissions are due on the not the last day of every month, but the 20th of each month. So, as laid out in the HOPWA grant agreement, your claims would be due on the 20th of each month. So, if let's say it was March 2026 expenses that you needed to claim for, you would claim for your expenses on April 20th, 2026. Um, Likewise, for your June 2026 expenses, that will be due on July 20th, 2026, which should be laid out in your agreements. If you miss a deadline, you will need late claims approval from our team. We grant those on a case by case basis based on the circumstances that arise. Um, Of course, with back claiming, you would also receive approval to be able to back claim to account for the contractual delays that were both at the federal government and then up on the state side. Um, at its core, in order to submit a claim, you would need to make sure that the award budget that you would like to have is reflected on IHCDA Online, as well as your IHCDA Online access. You would need to complete the claims narrative form, which is on our HOPWA webpage. That has been updated to include both resource identification as a line item and to outline our documentation requirements as necessary. Moreover, you would need supporting documentation for your expenses. That supporting documentation would include anything that shows proof of payment with the PII redacted. So that may be checks, that may be pay stubs, that may be a bank statement in some cases, anything that confirms that you have indeed made a payment. That could be an itemized receipt as well. In addition to those documentation showing proof of payment, if you are claiming staff time or staff mileage, you are required to provide timesheets for the time that you claimed and a mileage reimbursement report for any staff mileage claimed, just so we have an idea of the mileage rate that you're using, as well as how far you've traveled and the reimbursement that was issued to the staff member that has utilized mileage. In some cases, you will also need emails from our team. That would be required if we give you late claims approval or we otherwise instruct you to add an email to your claim submission. Oftentimes, if we tell you to add an email to your claim submission, it may be because the expense is eligible, but we need that email on file so that you'll have an easier time going through the claim submission process and cut down on um, any sort of administrative delays from that end. Additionally, sometimes we may ask you to add an email to your claim if there's just anything else going on that helps to make sure that the expense that you're claiming for is adequately something that you can claim for. We do outline the different types of eligible expenses that tend to be claimed for each line item in the claim supporting documentation chart that is posted on the IHCDA HOPWA webpage. We have also sent out that resource to everyone whose awards are also now posted on IHCDA online. When you're claiming staff time and you're providing a timesheet, we really need the following information. We want to know who is the staff member you're claiming time for, so their name, the activity or activities that they conducted. This refers to the budget line item that they would be claiming for really. Like, are they spending their time in STRMU? Are they spending their time in resource identification? Are they working on TBRA related things? Whatever that is, we just need to know what was happening there. The amount of time spent on the activity. So, if the staff member spent 2 hours in long-term program delivery, 2 hours, let's say, in short-term program delivery, maybe 3 hours in supportive services, that would be something to have noted. Um, the amount that would be incurred per activity. More so just making sure that whatever time is being claimed, that whatever amount that equates to hourly for that staff member, that the maths, for lack of a better term. And if you have reallocation funding in addition to your annual contracts, we want to know the corresponding funding stream that your time is associated with to prevent any duplication in case time was claimed twice. If you are if you are having any questions about the timesheet approval process or what needs to be included in a timesheet, you can always contact Jim and I, and we'd be happy to work with you more. As I've explained earlier on, the late claims approval email that you will receive from me will allow you to back claim expenses to July 1st, 2025, as written out in your agreement. When you are doing your claim submissions, keep in mind that one claim submission equals 1 month of expenses. If you have a 12-month contract, as the 2025 awards indicate, then you should have a total of 12 claims max. We strongly advise you to start with the earliest month that you intend to claim for and then move on to the next chronological month. If you skip a month, you forfeit the right to claim for the month that you skipped. So make sure that you're doing your due diligence, that you submitted July 1st, and then you'd go to August and then September and so on. Um, as you may see in the updated claims narrative form and in the claims documentation chart, we do consistently make sure to reiterate the need to omit PII if the expense is directly associated with a client. One thing for everyone, just for their own information and peace of mind, only the IHCDA Community Services team would have access to HMIS and access to the PII, and that's only for specific purposes of successfully administering the HOPWA grant. So this is why we do ask for the HMIS client IDs, because IHCDA Online just isn't the system to be able to safely do the client's first name or last name or even initials. Um, but the series of numbers would be the way to go because, again, like the only way that any of us would really be able to know anything about that would be if they had access to HMIS, which again would be only certain staff members in the CS team. We also amended the budget modification process and the budget modification form. That new form is on our HOPWA webpage. If you have a reallocation award that is active and you need to amend that budget, please contact me because the form that is on our website will not be applicable. The new form has resource identification as a specific line item that you may claim down on. And the new budget modification form also illustrates whether your budget is balanced and whether you have stayed within the 7% administrative cap that is imposed at the federal level. This year, you may amend your budget no more than 3 times. That is an increase from previous years because we really want to do our due diligence in ensuring that project sponsors have the resources and attention from our team to make sure that expenses are being claimed properly and within compliance with the programmatic requirements and regulations associated with the HOPWA program. Now, even though your agreement does say that you only have up to 3 modifications, keep in mind if circumstances arise, we would allow for more. Just let us know. We'd be more than happy to help you and make sure that you're able to claim down. Be judicious when you're deciding to do that modification and get that in ASAP, excuse me, because that's going to make sure that you have the ample time to get your modification fully processed. Now, claims errors do result in delays a lot of times when there is an error. Oftentimes, the claims review staff will deny the claim and ask you to revise the claim. Sometimes the error may be because the amount that was in the claims narrative did not match the amount that you have entered on IHCDA online. Sometimes there may be questions about anything provided, like if there was supporting documentation issues or questions. Just be conscientious, excuse me, in checking for accuracy, and make sure to do your due diligence in double checking if there are questions, so that you can cut down on the delays that may come from receiving your reimbursement. I do also include the claims email box here, just in case you had any questions about the IHCDA online system and how to use that successfully. Now, we also have a good amount of policies and requirements to go through. Jim, you're starting us off on the rent standard.
Yes, thank you, Neelafar. um, my introduction to HOPWA has been diving into rent standard and some of the options there. Currently, our agreements and any past agreements have our rent standard at HUD's FMR. Um, any unit that you're wanting to get a client in currently would have to meet FMR for each area, or for the area that the unit is in, and rent reasonableness. That's for TBRA and PBRA. I haven't said that little acronym. I don't know if I've seen that one, but the project-based rental assistance and tenant-based rental assistance. Um, we are currently, like I said, looking into options on raising this standard, and we will be in contact with you just as soon as we have any updates there. I do know that it is a concern. Nilufar has told me, how many of you have said, hey, it's tough finding units that meet FMR. So we hear you, and we're trying to get some relief there so that you can be able to get folks housed. But as we sit now, FMR is our standard.
And also, just to add on, this, if the rent standard was to change, it would be in accordance to the community-wide exception rent and options associated with that portion of the regulation.
Mhm. And again, STRIMU do not have to stick to rent reasonableness and FMR. So you can access the FMR estimates at the link here. You can just Google fair market rents as well. Right now we're using the 2026 numbers. If you need access to rent reasonableness, that is a site. We don't manage the site, but we have a profile on there that we manage ourselves. So if you need access to rent reasonableness, shoot Nilufar or I an email, and we'll get you signed up and then share your login info. So there is the limited exception for FMR. Want to make sure that you're all aware of this. So for your clients that you serve, 20% of the units that are receiving tenant-based or project-based rental assistance can go 10% over the FMR rates for your area. That is something that you'll need to track. Nilufar has a tracking document for you all, and that has to be submitted every September. So can't go over that 20% of units that access this exception, and you can't go over 10% above the FMR rates with this exception. But this does give you a little bit of room for that small percentage of your clients. All right, so then we're going to move to HMIS. HMIS stands for the Homelessness Management Information System. This is HUD system that's used to enter client level data and allows us to generate reports that that show client outcomes and such. IHCDA does administer and manage HMIS for the balance of state of Indiana. So that is something that comes out of our office here. This is a secure, confidential, web-based data collection system. We use Client Track is the vendor we use for this, and it tracks the nature and extent of homelessness in your programs. It's as user friendly as these kind of databases can be, I feel. It does have a case management tool where you can track your employee hours, your client goals, you kind of the services that are being attached to clients. There is a self-sufficiency matrix within HMIS that you can utilize. And we do require that you're utilizing HMIS for HOPWA. Data timeliness is something that is very important with this data. We know the sooner you get the data in, the more accurate it's going to be. So want to make sure that you're entering data within 5 business days of that initial client intake or certification or whatever action is being done. And this is a data point that shows up on the CAPER, the report that comes out of HMIS. This is also a point that our entire homelessness management system is graded on by HUD on how many projects do you have with these data timeliness errors. So that is something that we're very keyed in on. And again, it's important because we know it lends to the accuracy of the data when you get that in timely. We do also ask that you participate when appropriate in the homelessness inventory count. That is a survey that goes out that counts the number of beds and units dedicated to serving folks experiencing homelessness. And we also ask, when appropriate, that you participate in the point in time count. Tripping over all of my words there. But this is the count that's typically done in late January, where our communities across the state go around and physically do a count to see how many homeless folks we have in each of our areas. This data is very important. It drives a lot of the funding and programming that we assign to areas and HUD as well. So I mentioned the CAPER report. That is kind of the data report that you can pull out of HMIS once after you're inputting the data. So to access that report, once you're in HMIS, you would hover over HMIS reports or click that little list there, and then you're looking for the HOPWA APR CAPER. It would be for the fiscal year that you're currently in. So this one's a little dated. But so this one would be any report that you would pull on this year's data would be for fiscal year 25. But that's where you would access that, and we do encourage you to pull that caper maybe quarterly just to make sure everything's coming out right, that the clients that you're serving are in there, and that you're seeing the numbers that make sense for you, so that you have opportunity to fix any errors that you notice. Some resources for HMIS. We've got an awesome HMIS team. I know that you probably worked with them already, um, but you can access the website for HMIS off of our IHCDA website. There's some great tools on there. If you need to get in contact with HMIS, the best way to do that is through the help desk. I am often referred there myself when I go over and talk to the HMIS team. They say, hey, send us a help desk ticket. So that's the best way to get any help with your data work on HMIS.
All right, so now we're going to move on over to confidentiality. The very much the core of what we want to talk about with confidentiality is just a reminder that we really want to protect the medical diagnosis, the medical status, and just the identities of everyone who is receiving HOPWA assistance, at least during the time that they are there. Just a few examples, maybe just during the claim submission process, where instead of giving names, there would be the HMIS client ID number. Um, you may want to protect during intake or assessment just to make sure that no one is um, particularly overhearing anything that they may not, clients may not want to have overheard. Just being mindful of how you verbally or in writing communicate with your staff, just so you can still talk about the logistics of how to assist your clients while still also um, being mindful of course, the sensitive nature of the diagnosis information and how at the federal level everyone is required to be mindful of that information as much as possible. Um, in the event that information does need to be disclosed between parties, you would need to make sure that the client is able to sign for release of information or otherwise consent to where their information is going, for what purposes it's going, and just to make sure that there's something on file showing that, yes, it was disclosed, but the client had consented to this information being disclosed. Um, Also keep in mind that if there's not really any written authorization, you may have to otherwise only disclose if the disclosure is specifically required by law. So if there's any questions about that, you can always contact us, or of course, always speak with your agency's legal counsel to help you parse through all the different regulations associated with confidentiality, as well as confidentiality within the HOPWA program. So in its broadest sense, this information is going to be subject to the requirements. People's first and last name, their HIV diagnosis or their AIDS status, whether they're living with HIV or AIDS, that information needs to be confidential as much as possible. Um, Anything regarding client eligibility documentation, we want that to be kept confidential to the extent possible, as well as any data that alone or in conjunction with other data would reveal a client's identity or location. This confidentiality requirement in the HOPWA program is required not only of the project sponsors, but also on IHCDA, your grantee. So we all have, of course, the vested investment to protect the personal identifying information of the clients and beneficiaries served. When it comes to data storage or accidental disclosures, just keep in mind, be mindful of how you secure your physical files. If you need to lock them away in cabinets or in rooms, that would be helpful. Um, if you need to password protect electronic files, use a tracking software, or even an email encryption system, that could be a way to help reduce any sort of just confidentiality concerns that may pop up. Um, be mindful of where you leave client files if it's in an open area. Be mindful of where you're having your conversations with clients. Be mindful of course, just the very real possibility that technology is constantly changing. That's, again, a reminder for all of us on this webinar and for all of us listening in on this webinar that the advice that we have, of course, is what we know of given the technology that exists now, and that as technology evolves, then our conversation about confidentiality of client information will continue to evolve as well. Um, there are some things that you could look into, like getting a doing business as entity, which designation, which I know many of you already have, and just being mindful of when you communicate with your stakeholders, just so it's apparent that confidentiality is being minded in the work that you're doing for your HOPWA clients. We also have some updates on lead-based paint requirements and reminders and documentation. Moving to the next part of our presentation, our general reminder is just make sure that you're doing the inspections or you are detailing that um, it, the units that clients are placed in are exempt from having to go through the lead-based paint exemption process. Um, your requirement across the board, if you are administering HOPWA housing assistance, would be one, to provide the Protect Your Family from Lead in the Home booklet to all prospective families, and to complete the lead-based paint exemption form. Those two requirements are the main requirements for all units, regardless of the rental assistance type. There is the lead-based paint disclosure form and the lead-based paint ongoing agreement form. That is not required in all instances. We will detail when that is required in later parts of the presentation. Um, some HOPWA relevant exemptions are as follows. If you are administering STIRMU assistance for more than 100 consecutive days, then you would need to then you do have the exception there. Um, any properties that were built after 1978 would be exempted. If you're looking at a zero bedroom dwelling unit or a single occupancy dwelling unit, that is exempt. And in a general sense, in most cases, housing for the elderly or a residential property that is designated exclusively for persons with disabilities is also has an exemption, unless there is a child under the age of 6 that either already resides with the individual or individuals or is expected to reside in that dwelling unit, then the exemption would not apply. We have some resources, both from HUD and from IHCDA for you. Um, the first link is a training session that you can do on your own time, and a lead-based paint toolkit that you can go through, which is still posted on the HUD Exchange. We have a training that was completed by a former IHCDA staff member that you may also take a look at for your own information. And then, of course, we do have a lot more work that we have been doing as a team on lead-based paint. And so we will also release a lead-based paint requirement flowchart to help you figure out whether lead-based paint requirements apply for the unit that you are administering assistance to, and that flowchart will be generalizable for all of the programs that we administer amongst the community services team. Once this resource is finalized and released, I'll announce that for you and let you know where you can find it so that you may be able to utilize that moving forward. For VAWA requirements, I just want to give a brief reminder that it really applies to tenant-based and project-based rental assistance. Um, you may also find that for like specific operating costs or for community residences, that clients that apply for those would also be us eligible for the VAWA protections that we have at least available. Of course, regarding STIRMU, you can't deny assistance. You can't have assistance be terminated. And STRMU assistance can't be removed on the basis of or as a direct result of the fact that the individual is or has been a victim of one of the four types of VAWA abuse and violence. So we do have some of the VAWA resources from the February training, and there will be more in-depth information on VAWA in our upcoming 2025 manual. We have also provided a generalized client documentation list for you. And I say generalizable because these documentation requirements would likely apply for just generally, regardless of the housing assistance that the client is receiving. We do have specific documentation requirements that will be outlined in the 2025 manual that we have been talking about ad nauseum since I've been around. So, um, okay, so you would need to provide your housing application and assessment for each client, be able to confirm whether there is someone living with HIV or an AIDS diagnosis, make sure that there's a rent and income calculation form on file, medical insurance, if that is applicable for the client, if they have that, a program service agreement, the housing plan or the individual case management service plan that you are working to administer for the client, um, any releases of information or consent of information as needed. And depending on the client's circumstances, you may need to document any grievances that have been filed as well as any terminations of assistance. When it comes to generalizable housing documentation, you'll need to make sure that you have smoke detectors and carbon monoxide alarms and detectors, assigned lease and signed rental assistance payment contracts. Um, we also want to make sure that housing quality standards or habitability quality standards have been completed, signed, and dated also before the lease has been signed. Any copies of clear checks to keep on file. Any if it's applicable, you may need to also apply just the reasonable accommodation documentation into the file, any shared housing rent calculations that you've done if the client is in a shared rental situation, and then housing service plan just to detail where the client is going or what assistance is being administered for the client. For lead-based paint documentation, you would need to, at the bare minimum for everyone, make sure that they received the brochure and make sure that the lead-based paint exception form is complete. As far as the lead-based paint disclosure form and ongoing agreement form goes, it's only required in certain circumstances. So the disclosure form is only required if the unit is not exempt from lead-based paint requirements. You would know if that unit is not exempt if you completed the exception form. The ongoing agreement form is only required if it's not exempt and it was apparent that ongoing work has to be done to address lead-based paint in the unit or the home. For VAWA documentation, we have all of these updated links uploaded on our HOPWA webpage. The VAWA lease addendum is on our webpage, as well as the forms for VAWA, forms 5380 to 5383. For 5380 and 5381, you would only have to confirm for all clients that they received the forms. You would only have to complete forms 5382 or 5383 if it's applicable to the client's circumstances and they therefore need to access VAWA protections. So for record retention requirements within our program, so I'll start with the regs and then go into IHCDA policy. When it comes to current and accurate data on race and ethnicity, as well as the data on emergency transfers for those who are eligible under VAWA, you would need to keep those client level records for up to 4 years. That is a requirement technically on the grantee according to the regulation. However, since we, the grantee, don't administer direct assistance, that requirement is also on the project sponsor. Um, Additionally, we are all required to maintain financial records to ensure proper accounting in accordance with 2 CFR 200 as well. When it comes to general client files and documentation associated with the HOPWA program, we're also going with 4 years for record retention, specifically from date of exit to account for just the fact that some forms of assistance like TBRA could be years and years and years. Moving on to the program income reports, you would need to complete that twice a year, both due at the end of December and the end of June. And any program income that you generate needs to be spent before the award closes out. Program income really is just funding that has been generated from the time that you have spent administering the HOPWA assistance. Um, when you are reporting program income, you will all have a form that you have to complete, even if you don't have program income. That form also has a line signifying that you are saying no, that you do not have program income. You will report any program income in the CAPER as well. So this program income requirement is really more so both for us, but also for you to be prepared in reporting your program income at the federal level. Our closeout process includes the FMR limited exemption sheet if you are utilizing that exemption that Jim had previously talked about. The IHCDA HOPWA closeout form will also be a part of your closeout. We have started implementing this in 2024, and we will still be implementing it in 2025. It will still include narrative questions, which we use to give ourselves as the grantee an idea of what's going on and what we're seeing on the ground from all of our jurisdictions in the balance of state, as well as and being helping us answer any questions for HUD when we complete our CAPER as the grantee. So just so you know, we really do read your annual closeout forms, whether you're talking about all the great accomplishments or you're talking about potential barriers or challenges. We are making note of that and are trying to take the steps to cut down on what we can. We also have the CAPER, which I alluded to previously, but yeah, we all have to do that. And the CAPER process really is more so that we have to complete everything, both the grantee and the project sponsors. The grantee, aka us, will compile all of those CAPER reports and then submit it all in one submission on behalf of the Indiana Balance of State. And we will receive the corrections and send out any requests for corrections as they come in. If you have any questions about your CAPER, if you have any questions about how to address corrections, please let us know. We'd be more than happy to help you out. For the compliance and monitoring process, one thing I want to communicate with everyone is that at the core of what our team does with compliance monitoring, we really want to help subrecipients and project sponsors maintain and improve their administration of HOPWA assistance. So I know compliance monitoring and monitoring can sound scary, it can sound punitive, but it is something that can be used as a mechanism to help make sure that you're getting things back on track after the program year has ended. We are required to monitor awards in our signed agreement with HUD, so that is another reason why all of you may be experiencing a monitoring. First-time awardees will more than likely and definitively be monitored during their grant year or after their grant year. The process for how the compliance monitoring goes is like this. You'll receive an email notifying you that a monitoring will take place. So if you have not received an email, then I would assume that you're not being monitored. And if you have received one, you therefore will be getting monitored. They may ask to schedule a call. They may ask for additional documentation. And if they are asking for documentation, they have deadlines so that they can help finish that monitoring in a timely manner. So be mindful of those deadlines so that you can get that documentation to them on time and finish your monitoring process out in a more timely manner. If you are wondering what the compliance team tends to look at, they really look at how you're complying with federal requirements, such as your client file review, your case management, any sort of required documentation you need to keep on file. They may look at your financial review, looking at claims, making sure that expenses are eligible. They may also be looking at your HMIS data entries and whether you are utilizing CE or not. Um, CE is not necessarily a requirement of the HOPWA program since HOPWA does not have the requirement to meet any of the four categories of homelessness that COC and ESG outline in their regulations. We do encourage project sponsors, of course, to accept referrals if and when appropriate. And of course, when it comes to any sort of questions about the CE process, we do have teams that can help with that and staff that would be able to support you if you are working on that. You may also contact your CE lead in your regions in case you would like to ensure that you're doing your due diligence and having that communication with folks in your regions. Afterwards, after the entry call, the process in which the compliance team collects your documentation and reviews those, you'll receive a report that either details concerns or findings. A concern is something that may not technically be non-compliance, but could present a risk for non-compliance um, if there's controls that are not taken. A finding is something that is definitively out of compliance. Whether you have a concern or a finding, you as a project sponsor would then be responsible for addressing those concerns or findings until they're cleared. The report may also have a deadline. If there is a deadline to address those concerns or findings, then please be sure to be mindful of that as much as possible. Um, Please note that if you don't resolve your findings or you don't resolve anything in a timely manner, you may be unable to submit claims. I know all of you really want to ensure that your organization is being reimbursed for the hard work that you're doing. So just be mindful of that process. If you have any extenuating circumstances that prevent you from meeting a specific deadline in that process, communicate with your compliance monitor who you're working with and let them know what's going on. Um, the more communicative you are with them, the more likely they are to, being able to help you out or to answer any questions or to just be able to give you more time to resolve certain things that you may need more time on. We do have some general advice for how you can ensure award compliance. No matter what, when you have a doubt, just ask us, either Jim or myself. We are a resource. It's what we're here for. It's one thing to just get a contract out, but it's another to, of course, make sure that you have the support and understanding what you can do during the term of your award. Um, be mindful of your workflows as an agency or as a team. You may need to refine current workflows or create new workflows to help you efficiently enter and update data. As we talked about previously, that's 5 calendar days or almost a week um, for intake or recertification. Make sure you're tracking your staff time adequately and properly so that the staff time that you spend working on each of the eligible line items to administer that assistance is being accounted for. Be mindful of VAWA and confidentiality requirements. Be mindful of deadlines, whether it's a claim submission deadline or just any sort of reports that you need to submit either for us or for HUD. Um, just make sure that if nothing else, that you have some sort of workflow or some sort of communication with us so that you are more likely to make sure that if you do have experience with compliance monitoring, that it runs smoother or you otherwise are able to address any sort of concerns or findings in a timely manner. All right, so we do have a couple of updates. Since I've been talking for a while, I'll go ahead and give my side of the updates. So, you all heard me talk about the HOPWA manual, and first I would like to say we have heard you at the February training, specifically in the focus group, how you all needed an updated manual. I've had conversations with many of you about the need of a new manual. We've been hard at work on updating that manual, of course. It's been in review for a long time, and I know all of my email updates say it's in review or it's always something with review. And as time intensive as that is, we really want to do our due diligence in creating a manual that has a strong enough structure that allows us to update materials in a more timely manner as opposed to what now seems to be since 2018, pre-pandemic, we're vastly overdue for a manual. So right now, it really is in final review. We do have one more person that needs to read it. That is the chief programs and services officer at IHCDA. They need to give their stamp of approval. Once we have that stamp of approval, we will be able to publish the manual on the IHCDA website, the HOPWA webpage. So far, it's looking like we will likely see the manual published either the end of November or early to mid-December. If nothing else, it's going to be this calendar year because it really does need to be this calendar year. So more updates on that, as well as the webinar that we will host about that manual will be forthcoming. So Jim, you also have some updates. I'll let you talk about what your updates are.
Yes. And I'll just piggyback to let you know that Neelafar has been putting a ton of work in to make sure that the manual is an exhaustive resource for you all. And she's been driving that thing to the finish line and just about has it. So I know she's wanted to have it out for ages for you all, and it is almost there. My update is about the Inspire training requirement. We've been told this was coming down for a few years now on our side of the programs for COC, ESG, and HOPWA. Currently, as we sit, the Inspire regulation inspection is set to be required on February 2nd of 2026. So here in just a few months, um, that would become a requirement, and it's a more robust unit inspection requirement. We have yet to see any guidance come from HUD for HOPWA or for any of the other uh, community development programs. So more to see on that, but as we sit, February 2nd would be when that is required. We do have folks within IHCDA overseeing programs that utilize this requirement or this inspection. So we'll be leaning on them and putting together some guidance for you all, and just making sure that you're equipped to implement that when it is a requirement. I also wouldn't be surprised if it's that deadline's moved again, but we're going to do everything we can to have you prepared if it is implemented in February.
Mhm.
That's all I had, Neelafar.
Yeah. This is our contact information. As I said in the beginning, and I've also said, I'm saying now, we will put both the recording of this webinar and the slides up on our website. So please feel free to contact us. You have my email and Jim's email over here. You have any questions about coordinated entry could be sent to our COC engagement manager, Jesse Van Hooser. If you have HMIS questions, we have the help desk information here, as well as the claims inbox for any questions related to IHCDA online and any access assistance that you would need with that. Um, and so with that, we're open for questions. I know we threw a lot of information at all of you, so um, we do have some time for questions. We'll wait as we try to either hear anything in the chat or um, if someone wants us to unmute them, or if you're not unable to unmute yourselves, we can also unmute you and work on making sure you can say your question verbally, if not through chat. The manual is expected to be released either the end of November or the beginning of December. In all likelihood, it's probably going to be the beginning to middle of December. You're welcome. All right, so if there are no more questions, then no more questions, at least for, of course, the while we're all together. I won't keep you on here longer. We can end the webinar here. Thank you all for joining and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.